Shalawama, Aka Awata. I just watched this video that you're seeing on screen. It's a video of debate that goes on in the United States legislation. Democrats are sponsoring a voting bill that will in effect usher in a one-party state, eviscerate the other party, the other dominant opposition party in both houses of the parliament. Now, you see Ted Cruz, he dubbed this bill as Jim Crow 2.0. See, it's amazing how they use languages. Jim Crow 2.0. How did Jim Crow 2.0 is Jim Crow 1.0? A system of laws framed to disenfranchise one particular race of people. Not all races of people. One particular identified race of people. Specifically, in particular, Jim Crow 1.0 is targeted to only one race of people, used to terrorize these people. If I'm not going to Jim Crow now, all the shit that goes on in Jim Crow, this video will be long. The hypocrisy of these people is beyond me. They're incapable. They are incapable of seeing right or wrong. They are incapable of seeing true justice. These people are truly demonic. So the party in power, because they are going to bring up a law that is akin to Nazism or communism, that is going to affect you, and the threat of it alone is not passed, it's not become a law. The status quo have not changed. And you address it as Jim Crow. Jim Crow is not, it is not as if white people, rank and file of white people up and down the country will be born as stakes, dragged at the back of a pickup truck on the floor for miles. It is not as if white people will be born pick a red man, just as you pick a nigger. It's not like they are going to pick a red man on the street and burn it and take a selfie and send postcards to your family. The threat of one party canceling out the other party, the threat of one party bringing illegal immigrants to vote for the ruling party. We dub this as Jim Crow 2.0. Ah, Psalm 64. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. Psalm 94. That is this is Psalm 64, verse 8. Verse, Psalm 64, verse 8. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. Upon themselves. See, this I will play this video. You will see the revelation that will be coming out of his mouth. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. You will see hypocrisy on display here. 94:20. Psalm 94:20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by law? The senator that sponsored this bill is Schumer. We know that Schumer is a Jewish demon. He's a Jewish demon that is put there by the globalist elite for one thing: bring down United States little by little. That's his job. To weaken the United States, to weaken the military. That's his job of that man, Schumer. And that's the job of the Democrats. The Democrats are there to bring down the United States. Not that the way I'm speaking is as if I'm for United States. I don't care what they do to themselves. Democrat or Republican, they are one half of the same coin. One half of the same coin. Because he was the one that cited Jim Crow. He was the one that cited Jim Crow injustice in pushing this bill when he was introducing his bill he cited Jim Crow, and he used this phrase, the eyes of the world are on us. This is double tongue. This is double talk. Fuck tongue. You speak truth and lies. You speak peace, but war is in your heart. Ultimately, before this bill is to come down heavily upon the house of Jacob. To bring down the church. Once they deal with the Republican in the House of Legislature, then they have freedom to go after the faiths, the religion, and ultimately the Hebrew Israelites. That is unmasking them, that is pushing the vibration of the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, his son. This name, the vibration of this name, is causing chaos in the world. It's causing chaos in the United States. The world can never be the same because the vibration of the name of Yahweh, Wa Yahweh Shai, is being pushed throughout the airwaves. And this Jewish rat controlling the United States, especially the legislative arm and even the executive arm, they control it. They are exposed. They are exposed. So they want to silence the Hebrew Israelites. Ultimately, by this one vote, this vote look, let's say, innocuous. Like it doesn't seem that has any religious intention, anything. No. The aim is to silence the truth. Whether they succeed or not legislatively, this agenda, they set it in motion. They are going to do it, whether it becomes law or not. That is the agenda. They're going forward with it, either whether by law or by the color of law. They are going to carry on with this. 94:20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by law? They frame mischief by law.
King.
Madam Chairwoman, this legislation, I believe, is the most radical legislation the Senate has considered in the 9 years I've been here, and it is the most dangerous legislation pending before the United States Congress. I listened to the speeches this morning. I listened to Senator Schumer's speech, where he recounted this country's shameful history of Jim Crow laws. And he's right. Jim Crow laws were bigoted, racist, and disenfranchised millions of people. And it is worth remembering that those Jim Crow laws were drafted by Democrats, they were implemented by Democrats, and they kept Democrats in power. Now, today's talking point repeated in the media is that was the Democrats of yesterday, not today. Well, today the Democrats are doing it again. This legislation, to use a phrase that has been popularized on the media recently, is Jim Crow 2.0. This legislation would disenfranchise millions of Americans. Many of us are referring to this legislation as the Corrupt Politicians Act because it would do. Senator Schumer talked about politicians picking their constituents. That's what this legislation does. This legislation is designed to ensure that Democrats never lose another election. This legislation would register millions of illegal aliens to vote. It is intended to do that. It is intended to do that because Democrats have made the decision that millions of illegal aliens voting are likely to vote for Democrats. This would register vast numbers of criminals and felons to vote because Democrats have made the decisions that criminals and felons are likely to vote for Democrats. This legislation strikes down virtually every voter integrity law adopted at the state level. Voter ID laws. Over 70% of Americans support voter ID laws. By the way, over 60% of African Americans in this country support voter ID laws. 29 states have voter ID laws on the books. What does this legislation do? Strikes them all down. Says it's illegal for any state to have a voter ID law. Ballot harvesting, 31 states prohibit ballot harvesting. Why? Because it is a corrupt practice where paid operatives handle the ballots of someone else, and it has repeatedly led to instances of stealing votes. What does this bill do? It strikes down all 31 states' restrictions on ballot harvesting. This bill turns the Federal Election Commission from a bipartisan agency into a partisan agency. Into a partisan agency controlled by Democrats. Why? Because Democrats want Chuck Schumer in charge of the Federal Election Commission. The effect of that, I will point out, will be that every Republican senator and every Republican House member will be investigated, will be fined, will be prosecuted by the Federal Election Commission. By the way, if this bill were to pass and miraculously Democrats were to lose power, and this is designed to make it impossible for Democrats to lose power, I ask you for a moment, which Democrat on this committee would want a Federal Election Committee controlled by Senator McConnell? Because I guarantee you, every Democrat would then be investigated and prosecuted, and the Federal Election Commission shouldn't be a partisan weapon designed to win elections. This legislation is profoundly dangerous, and the reason it suppresses millions of votes is by allowing millions of people to vote illegally. And that is the intended effect, and that would be the actual effect of this bill. It dilutes the legal votes of American citizens. Senator Schumer said, and I wrote this down, the stench of oppression. When Democrats drafted Jim Crow the last time, well, the stench of oppression is here again. Senator Schumer said, the eyes of history are on you. The eyes of history are on you as well. And let me point out something. It's just a few years ago that Republicans had control of the White House, the Senate, and the House. We didn't do this. We didn't try to change the election rules so that Democrats could never be elected. We didn't engage in the corruption to say, we're going to rig the game. So if the voters decide to throw the bums out, the voters don't get the right to do that because we're going to put our thumb on the scale so that only our party wins. To my knowledge, not a single Republican suggested doing that. This bill doesn't protect voting rights. It steals voting rights from the American people. In the course of this markup, I expect that we're going to consider a number of amendments. I've introduced 46 amendments focused on substantive elements of this bill. We're going to discuss each aspect of this bill and how they disenfranchise the American voters. But sadly, I expect to see a lot of play acting. All Democrats voting against those amendments, all Republicans voting for them, because